So cutting the cam right to the specs of the manufacturer is yeah. Anyway, high performance stuff means high performance money. But I had a better idea because I ran out of shit to do. And they say, well, come up with a better idea. What do you want to do? I said, I want to shoot a fucking bullet across the fucking room and shit. They're like, what kind of bullet? I said, a fucking electron. They're like, that sounds interesting. So, I drew it up on paper and shit. And I showed it to them. And, they liked the idea. They let me construct the gun and shit. I made the electron gun and shit. And the target. I made the target. So they just made the rack system to make sure that the gun was always firing in what's it called? Intersecting in a 45-degree intersection with the material, which was 2-inch piece of steel, high carbon steel. So it's got a little bit of tensile strength, but it's got a lot of like brittleness to it. You know, very very hard piece of metal and shit. So what it does is, you know, I got a patent for it. We all did. Everybody that worked in the shop, we all got a patent for it. So it shoots the electron into the piece of carbon, the steel, and then comes out the other side of the steel, and it makes a hole the size of an electron through the steel. And what that's good for is like cleaning water. Water will go through the smallest hole ever. So an electron-sized hole is small enough hole for water to go through and everything else to get trapped. So the reason why you need hard carbon steel is because the shit that gets trapped in the holes needs to get flushed out and shit. So it's a lot of pressure on the steel. So it needs to be thick and shit. So each plate that I made was worth $1 million. $1 million for every plate that I made. There was no market. There was a market for it, but nobody was making anything for desalination for coastal communities. Desalination plants. And it's just such a simple process. You suck the water up, push it through the hole, and then what comes out the bottom end is usable, drinkable, unsalted water and shit. And then when you get scale on top of the thing, you gotta take the shit off and knock the scale off. That's all. Scale builds up on everything, you know. The most important thing was that the hole, the 10,000 holes per piece of steel, were in the correct orientation on the steel, that it didn't weaken the steel. You know, like if you put a bunch of holes in line on a piece of steel, you can actually break the steel off where the holes are, you know. So you don't want to, you know, have the holes too close, even though they're so small. So each hole was plotted like throughout the steel. So, and it had to be a direct impact at 45 degrees to go through the hole at 45 degrees. If it was on an angle, it would create a bend in the steel, you know. So these all factors had to be like written down. I had to write it all down and shit. So I wrote a manual on how to produce a proper desalination plate, you know, 8 foot by 4 foot. So I'm making desalination plates after like 2 weeks at the place. We're making mad money, like we're making $6 million a week. So I had a guitar and I used to play. Like I would work 5 hours a day. I would come in, set up, boom, make 5 hours in. I got paid for 10 hours. I was making $22 an hour. I was covering 2,000 something a week and shit. And so I was down on the boardwalk and like I was just walking and shit and just feeling the crowd and shit, looking for a place to play and shit. And this fucking girl come walking by, and she was gorgeous. And I was like not a right man at the time and shit, but I just felt the need to know somebody, you know. And so I turned her, like I walked by her. I was like, man, that girl's so beautiful. I can't let her get away and shit. So I turned around. I ran to her and I tapped her on the shoulder. I said, do you have like a minute to hear me sing you a song? And she was like, sure. So I busted my guitar out, and I never sung this song ever in my life, and I've never sang it to anyone ever since. But I sang her, I sang her, "You Are So Beautiful" by Joe Cocker, and she loved it so much. She asked me to come back to her room and shit, and like from that day, that night, and we didn't have intercourse or anything. We just talked. But like, I had a bigger room, but I didn't know where my room was because I get lost and shit. I don't know where I live and shit. And so like, I lived in her room, which was very small. I mean, for like after that, like, she let me in her room that night, and it was okay with her if I didn't leave. But I had to go to work, so. And we didn't have intercourse very much. But the second night, like, we didn't have intercourse the first night. We just like laid and talked, and like she told me about like her horrible family life, and like it was kind of like my horrible family life, and so we connected and shit, and horror and shit. I didn't tell her about Guatemala. I wanted to tell her. It just didn't seem appropriate to tell her that I fed children the cooked meat of their oppressors. I mean, that just sounds horrible and shit. Yeah. So the second night that we were together, like, I came back, and I kept my guitar there and shit. And she painted. She was a painter, and she was beautiful. She had like she was like part African and part Puerto Rican and part Spanish, and she had like long curly hair down to her like waist, and she was very figureful, like soft. Like, she had softness. Like, I felt her softness, even though nobody outside of us would ever think she was soft. Believe me. And so her name was Krysta Ramaglia, and she was an artist. She also was an escort, and she had a drug problem. I am a Marine with brain damage and like bad experiences, and yeah, I smoke marijuana, you know, smoke cigarettes. It's not heroin, but I fell for her. I was copping heroin for her just to make sure she wasn't going to get beat. That's how much I loved her and shit. We used to play games on the boardwalk of like $10 fucking shoplifting. We used to shoplift like $10 worth of shit on the boardwalk like every day and shit. I would go back and pay for it at the end of the week and shit. I wouldn't tell her and shit, but like, I feel like should pay for shit. But it's fun to steal for a woman, if it's only $10. So, so like the second night, like I came back and like we talked and shit, and I told her that I was impervious to destruction. So like she had to prove it to me that that I wasn't impervious to destruction. So that's when our relationship really took off. Was me being impervious to destruction and her proving that I'm not. And every day, 7 days a week, she beat the shit out of me for 4 hours. The day, my day consisted of waking up at 6 o'clock, making her a poached egg, 2 poached eggs, and then she would make me oatmeal, 5 minute oatmeal, the oatmeal I liked, and then we would go to the store. I didn't have to be at work till 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock. It didn't matter. So we would go to the store, the general store. It's because we beat the shit out of each other. Like I didn't beat her. I just like grabbed her by her arms and like threw her back and shit. Like or like redirected her swing like when she would like grab like the end table. Like the end table would get broken over my head and then there would be pieces of end table and then she'd be whapping the shit out of me with end table pieces. And it fucking hurt. So like I fucking would grab them off of her, the end table pieces, and I would throw them in the corner next to her, my guitar, and her paintings, and she was a lovely painter. I swear she was awesome and shit. And so like she was like therapeutic for me, like because I'm a fucked up dude and shit. I need to be fucked up. And what's better to have a beautiful woman be beating the shit out of me every fucking day and shit. It was awesome and shit. And the cops would come, and I would tell the cops I'm the bad guy and shit. I would tell them why I'm the bad guy and shit. I would tell them the bad guy shit that I was afraid to tell her, Krysta. I would tell the cops and shit how fucked up in the head I am. And the cops would just leave. They had our names down as people just that were fucked up. And where she lived was just a rooming house. It wasn't like some kind of stately. It wasn't no stately place and shit. There's a lot of other people that were like corrupt and shit. So, yeah, she used to beat the shit out of me, and then I would defend her. I would go looking for her, like when I got done work and shit, and like she didn't come back or something. She told me where she was going. I would go looking for her, and like sometimes she was in trouble, so I had to help her out with her troubles, and so I copped dope for her, and then I helped her with like troubles, and so I guess I was like her pimp and shit, you know. So she had this one guy, Anthony Guadopoulos, and he was a client, and this got to be like around. I lived with her from October when like the second week of me working at the in Atlantic City till February. The end of February. So I lived with her like for like 16 weeks. And she had this problem with this Anthony Guadopoulos. He was a worker for Donald Trump. He was like Donald Trump's fucking left nut and shit. And he wanted to put her up in some kind of like motel or hotel room and like feed her whatever she wanted to have and like, you know. She didn't like him. She thought he was a creep. And she only dealt with him because he had money and he's Donald Trump's buddy and shit. You don't say no to Donald Trump and shit. And so like the 2 days prior to a tragic event was Anthony Guadopoulos got physical with my Krysta, and like I had arrived there to pick her up to walk her back to our place and shit, and like I knew something was bad, so I busted in on him, and he called her a no good junkie bitch. I beat the fucking piss out of him. And so we left and shit. And like I tried to tell her, I was like, listen, I'm making $2,000 a week. I worked 16 fucking weeks. I got like money in the bank and shit. We could get a place anywhere. You know, we don't have to fucking stay here in Atlantic City. This is like destroy. This is the destroyer of lives and shit here and shit. We could go somewhere else. There's plenty of machine shops, other places. I got plenty of inventions to make, you know. So, so 2 days later, like, I'm trying to adamantly get her to leave with me, just to leave. And she don't want to leave because Donald Trump, he's got influence everywhere and shit. And Anthony Guadopoulos is a little fucking tyrant and shit. And fucking, you should understand a lot of like girls in Atlantic City end up as like slaves in third world countries and shit. They get put on barges, sold out for $10,000 a piece. It's fucking disgusting. But a lot of girls in Atlantic City end up in the slave trade. And I was telling her all these things back then and shit, and like that Monday of February, the end of February, like she wouldn't let me stay at the fucking office. She wouldn't. Yeah. She knew. I'm confident she knew that she had no. That I was the best thing she would ever have, and that sucks because I suck. I'm an asshole. So I had to leave her with Anthony Guadopoulos, and 5 hours went by. I went back, and Anthony Guadopoulos, Donald Trump comes to the door, and he goes, "Who the fuck are you to think you can knock on my door?" I say, "I'm the guy who is the fiance of Krysta Ramaglia, whom I left here and I'm picking up." He goes, "Oh, well that junkie whore left you and took a bus to New York City." Right? That's what Donald Trump said to me. Right? And then I looked in the fucking room and I said, "Hey, hey asshole, did you get a nice piece on your last fucking journey?" And he yells out, he turned his fucking face to me, he yells out, he goes, and he had his fucking eye, his eye was pulled out of his fucking skull. And he yelled, he goes, "She fucking cut my fucking eye out. She cut my fucking eye out." He kept saying it. And fucking Donald Trump went back in and fucking closed the fucking door and shit. And fucking, I fucking went down to the police. The police didn't want us to hear about it. I went to the fucking FBI. The FBI said that we have a case, but we need more evidence to make a conviction, you know. So I'm left all alone, and I go back to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump just comes right out. He comes right out the office, and he says, "You ain't jack shit. I run this motherfucking country." That's what he said. He said, "Your junkie girlfriend, she took off. Just accept it. Now, where you work at, I got your whole itinerary. Guess what? You don't work there anymore. I own it. It's going to be a nightclub. The business I built up when I came back from saving that CIA guy, right? I'm making $1 million every day, 6 days a week, for 16 weeks. Think about that. How much money that machine shop was making in that 16-week period of $6 million a week. How much was Donald Trump's casino business making? You see how I interfered with his fucking idealistic fucking protocol? Because my business has nothing to do with cocaine, laundering cocaine, ruining people's fucking houses, pursuing people to go and set their houses on fire because the casinos really don't want to own their house, they just want to get paid. So the casinos are in with the legal establishment of the community from where the people come from to fucking gamble their houses away. So, yeah, the righteous gets pushed aside in Donald Trump's world and the whole America world. America is a mule that is raped. A mare is a mule. It is raped. And this is what happened to Krysta Ramaglia. She was a rape mule since she was a kid because her own father raped her. How about them apples? You want to call her a junkie fucking bitch whore? You know, that was my girlfriend. I love that girl. She was... So I get a call from the FBI because I'm causing trouble to Donald Trump to find Krysta, with just a glimpse of hope that she's still alive. But I just seeing Anthony Godopoulos with his eye cut out of him, I knew that he did something bad. And the FBI brought me to a location northwest of Atlantic City in the marshes where they found a body tied up with mailing twine, naked. They wanted to know if it was Krysta. So they took me out there and yup. It was her. It was horrible. I didn't want to let her go. I fought the FBI. I did. I got into like dog. I have like spirits, and I got into dog spirit, and I was ready to fucking kill them, man. Cause like they could give two shits, you know. She was my everything. I mean, she was. She was what I needed. Like, I needed her more after, though, but... It wasn't sexual, it was love. I wanted to feel her pain. And she helped me release mine. We loved each other. What does Anthony Godopoulos or Donald Trump know about love? You know? What does anybody know? She had been strangled to death. Her neck was broken from strangulation. The FBI, they had to drug me, and they left me at the door of Krysta Ramaglia, all drugged up. And the owner of the building said that if I didn't leave, he was going to call the cops, and that everything in that room was his. And which I just wanted my guitar and shit, you know. And so, in a drug-stated way, I broke through the room. I got my guitar. I went and just played on the beach. And I remembered the whole system, cocaine system, from when I lived there in '92. The whole cocaine system. It's there for everyone to enjoy, you see. It's not a hard system to understand or even it's not even out. It's all out in the open. It's all out in the open. And I'm going to explain it in one thing. But this conversation is over. This is about 94. 94.